hats that I saw. So now, how many were Marines from here? None.
They're not joiners.
They what?
They're not joiners, apparently.
Oh, but down there, I know, Benny, you were there, and you saw it. There was just a lot of people with Marine hats. I was just really amazed at it. So, let's see, let me turn the page. I did have to bring some notes so I could keep up with what's going on. I'd like to say, and I know everybody hears this, thank you for your service. We hear that time and time again. But until you served, you don't realize what the sacrifice is that's made. And then what I have found out over the years, it's not the sacrifice that I made, because I just told you I love my job. I had the best job in the world. It was the sacrifice that my family had to make. My wife and my daughters. In other words, we're packing up moving every few years. So when we're looking at a military family, it's the family that's making the big sacrifice. And we have to keep that in mind from time to time. And we have to recognize the wife and the children. So after Louise and I married, we lived in 7 different cities in 5 different states during the time that I was on active duty. And so that, having said that, that means we're moving constantly. And I was truly blessed to have the opportunity to serve. And so I came from a very poor family myself. I mean, when I say we were poor, I hear people talk about, well, I was raised on a farm, and we only had 5 cows and 10 chickens or whatever. I wish we'd have had that, but we didn't. What we had was 9 children living in the house, and I was the middle one, and so it was kind of tough. But my father was in the, I think it was called the Army Air Corps at the time. Then it changed over to the Air Force back in about 48, 49, somewhere along in there. But he was the one that set the tone for the military, because he was in the military, and then myself and 2 brothers went in. I went in the Navy, one of my brothers went in the Army, and one of them went in the Air Force. 2 of us wound up staying in for 28 years and then retiring. 2 of my sisters married soldiers at the time that, you know, when they were marrying age. So we were definitely, it was kind of like a tradition within our family to go in the military. Today, I have 2 nephews, one that's already retired out of the Navy, another one that is currently serving in the Navy, and then I've got about 6 nephews and great-nephews that are on active duty right now. So it's just, you know, once you get it started, it just continues on and on and on. And so to me, that's just been a great calling on our part. So I guess you would call us a military family. Yeah. I personally did not do very well in school. So when it came time for the Navy coming along, you know, they had a draft going on at the time. And so a buddy of mine, the 2 of us looked at it and said, hey, we're going to get drafted, so we need to go down and join instead of getting drafted and sent to Vietnam at the time. And so we did. And the Navy offered me opportunities that would not have been available to me had I not have gone in there. And so that's another great thing that I saw about the Navy. And I started out as an E1, and that's the very bottom for those who don't know. And then I worked my way up to E5 before I got into recruiting. And as I told you, when I got into recruiting, that was my calling. That was where I needed to be. And so then I wound up going from a recruiter to the director of the recruiting school down in Pensacola, Florida. So about as high as you could go in recruiting as an enlisted person. But it's not about me. It's about the other people. It's the ones that I was able to contact. And I told Harold I was going to mention a couple of them tonight. And I didn't realize that a mother to one of the guys that I put in the Navy, her picture's on the wall out here. Now I don't know, she may have been married more than once, but her son was David Mullins. And I was told when I came in tonight, she comes down here every day. I don't know if any of y'all know her.
Two Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Is it 2 Wednesdays and Thursdays? Okay. But her son joined the Navy, spent 20 years in the Navy, and retired. And then after he retired, he became I guess you call it a bivocational pastor. And then a few years ago, he caught cancer and passed away. In fact, the last time I saw him, we were at the cancer walk. They was having it at the YMCA that night. And he and I made the first laugh on the cancer walk. And then shortly after that, he passed away with his cancer. But I'm going to tell you about 3 guys that I met early in my recruiting tour from Otagoville High School. How many of you are familiar with Otagoville? I call it a little small podunk town. I don't even think they have a red light. It's got maybe a flashing light down there and a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, and you better not speed. Well, I did a talk, kind of like here, you know, where you're just talking with the students that were going to graduate that year. And there were 3 people that I remember that was in that class. One of them's name was Dale Steele. Now, Dale was a kind of rowdy young man, but when he got in the Navy, he did a little drinking and a little bit of carousing, but eventually he straightened out his life. Then he did well. Now, I understand he lives over somewhere near Norfolk now and has since retired and is doing okay. Another one was Ed Ziegler. His daddy was a preacher at some point, or his granddaddy was, over in the Otagoville area. And Ed went in the Navy. He called me when he come home on leave and let me know that he was home on leave, just chat a little bit, and then he'd head on back to wherever he was stationed. Well, he wound up retiring, and he now, last time I talked to him, he was working for the Social Security Administration over there in Montgomery, off of, I think it's not Vaughn Road, it's that next road, Carmichael Road. Anyway, he was working in that building. I saw him in there working one day. So he did well. There was another guy that was in that same graduating class, and he didn't join the Navy. His grandmother was going to send him to the University of Alabama. So he went to college. Well, after going to college, he retired. I mean, not retired, yeah. He graduated from college, and he met a friend of mine whose name was Ted Jones, who was a Navy recruiter in the Tuscaloosa area. And Ed talked to him about becoming an officer in the Navy. And the young man told him, he said, well, I was going to be, I'm going to law school. And he kept talking to him. Ted Jones kept talking to him. The man decided, okay, I'll go in the Navy. He retired out of the Navy as a 2-star admiral. I mean, isn't that amazing? And I contacted him. He was the 2-star admiral over Navy Region Hawaii. And I sent him an email while I was working for the government and told him, I said, I talked to young men out at DYS, and I would like to use the information about you and how well you did. So it's not about where you came from, it's how you use what you got to get to where you want to go. And I said, here I am talking to a guy that graduated from a little podunk high school and is now a 2-star admiral. So he sent me his picture along with some write-ups out of the newspaper and various things. And I use that out there at DYS when I speak to them young boys out there. And I show them that picture and I say, here is a young guy from Otagoville, 2-star admiral. It's just amazing what can happen. So another one I was going to mention is, just from here in Prattville, he did well. Alvin Hopkins, now he had like, I think there was 9 or 10 of them in that family. And so there's some of them still scattered around. He wound up, after he retired out, he went to work for FedEx in Memphis as some kind of executive over there now. One night I was coming down out of the stand at the PCA. That's where 2 of my grandkids go to PCA. And they were playing soccer. And I'm coming down out of the stands. Now I don't wear this hat. This one stays on top of a shelf at the house. But I wear Navy ball caps. And when I started down out of the stand, this guy was walking ahead of me and he stopped and turned around. And when he did, I said, I know that guy's going to speak to me. And he said, were you in the Navy? And I said, yes, I was. And he said, well, I was too. And I said, well, what year did you go in? He told me. And I said, okay, tell me just a little bit about you. He said, well, I went into advanced electronics. And he said, I stayed in the Navy for a period of time, and then I got out. And I said, tell me your first name. He said, Malcolm. I said, you're Malcolm Branch. You worked at the Pizza Hut up here in Prattville before you joined the Navy, didn't you? He said, are you Bob King? I said, yep, that's me. So, again, it's just, you don't think about things like that would just carry on and on. I ran into a guy over at Costco. Now, I've only been in Costco about 3 times in my life. And this guy's he's giving out free food over there. They do that from time to time. So he's giving out some kind of little free food. And I looked on his name tag and it had Gerard. Now that's a strange name. So, and I'm wearing a Navy hat. So I come back and I said, yeah, I'm gonna try a bite of that. And I looked at that name tag and I said, he looks at me and he says, so you were in the Navy? He said, I was in the Navy too. And I said, okay. And I said, how long did you stay in? He said, I stayed in for 20-something years and retired. So I was in the nuclear power program. I said, is your last name Junkanese? He looked at me, he said, it's not Junkanese, it's pronounced Yunkanese. The J is silent. I said, I recruited you in the Navy years ago. And he said, oh, no, I don't think you were my recruiter. How would I know your last name is Junkanese? So he laughs about it. He said, well, maybe so. I said, I'll tell you what, give me your phone number and I'll send you some information. And so I still got a little card file that's got every person that I put in the Navy. And it's got their name, the date they went in, what program they went into. So I went home that night, looked it up, and I called him back. And I told him, I said, I interviewed you on December the 28th, I think it was. I went and talked to your parents on January the 4th. You took the nuclear field test. He told me he didn't do well on the nuclear test. He said he only made 67 on it. He said, I barely passed it. I said, the highest score you can make is 70. What are you talking about? You barely passed it. It's not one of those things you make 100 on. It's 1 point per question. So I'm thinking he only missed 3 questions on it. And then I found out at another point that he really only missed 2 because the Navy had made a mistake on that test and they had 1 question on there that did not have the correct answer. So it didn't matter what you answered, you missed it. Unless you just guessed at it, you can put it down. But the right answer wasn't on the sheet. So anyway, here this guy is, just run across him. And I still run across people. You know, it happens just from time to time. Now, there were some others that were really, that I remember well just because of the dealings with them. But there was a Thig Pen, there was 2 brothers here, they went in. The David Thig Pen went in the Navy, his brother Steve went into the Army. But David became a warrant officer in the Navy after serving as enlisted for a period of time. And then David Mullins, now that's the one I said that his mother's picture is out there. And when I walked in and saw that picture, she was in the Air Force, and I recognized her. But now David is the one I was talking about that passed away with the cancer. I often wonder about, when I was in recruiting, I personally was involved in recruiting over 330 people into the Navy. They served anywhere from 4 years to 6 years, and then some of them stayed in and retired. So that's between 1,200 and 1,500 years of service, most of it coming right here out of Prattville. I recruited a little bit in Montgomery, but my main area was Prattville, Alabama. It's just amazing what this town has offered to the military. I already mentioned just briefly about that I used some of the information from the Admiral in talking with the young boys out there at DYS. And I look forward to getting back out there again and doing that some more. The advice that I give and gave over the years, I never tried to force anybody to go into the military. I would talk to them and say, hey, here's what I'm going to tell you we have to offer, and you make a choice as to what you want to do. But I would advise them that you need to stay away from drugs, you need to stay out of trouble. If you've been in trouble, you need to stop it and clean your life up and then move forward with it. And then I'd also tell them that if you're at a point in life that you need to make a decision on what's right or wrong, here's what you need to think about. And I even use this with the active duty people in the Navy. If you don't know whether it's right or wrong to do this, if you were to sit down and talk with your mother, what would she tell you? Or with your grandmother, what would she tell you? And then you make a decision based on what you think they would say, because they're not going to tell you to do something that's wrong. And I use that with the young boys. I used it with the ones that were going in the military. And when I was a chief recruiter and a command master chief, I used it with the sailors that were working for me. And I would tell them, that's what you need to think about. And then if you make that decision the wrong way, it's because you chose not to do that. You know, you made a conscientious decision to do that. So I am really grateful for the opportunity that the Navy and the military gave to me. And I'm thankful for this country that we live in. We need a strong military. We need to continue to support the military. And it's people like you that do that. So again, I never viewed my job in the Navy as a job. It was a calling. It was what it was meant for me. When they sat down and wrote the book of what Bob King was supposed to do, that was what I was supposed to do. And I appreciate that opportunity. I thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you tonight, and wish you all the best. And if you got any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer your questions, whatever you want to throw at me. What do you think we got?
I have lots of questions, but I'd like to do it one-on-one.
Well, you can certainly do that anytime, anytime. All right, well, good to meet you. Oh, yeah, yes, we're gonna do that.
Okay, and we have some coins here, and they're, what you call them, challenge coins.
Challenge coins from the
It has to go
AARP.
from a veteran to a veteran, okay? So, Benny Bell,
You didn't give me the.
no, you gotta come
Oh,
up
you
and get
gotta
yours
come
first. You gotta work for it.
Benny, I'm gonna present you with a coin.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
All right,
I guess Benny's
yeah,
the one.
Benny's gonna, then you present.
Now,
yours.
okay.
There
I'm
you
gonna
go.
present you with a coin, my brother.
Thank you, Benny. I'll put that one in my
Thank you.
pocket.
Eugene Covington?
Eugene.
Now, as he's coming up, these challenge coins, they started this in the military several years ago. The best I can remember was like in the 80s, early 90s, and it kind of spread around that just about every command has their own coin. These coins happen to have AARP on them, so they're from the AARP. But each command has them, and then as various people do different things, they pass them on from one to another. And then you get a large collection, depending on how long you stay in the military. You can gather up quite a collection of coins.
Thank you very much. Now I'm supposed to pass it on.
No, that one's yours.
That's yours.
Yeah, that one's yours.
Thank you very much.
Now, Ed Gruby was a big part of our group here, and, so, can you pass that on to his wife, Fran?
I deserve it. I moved 18 times in 20 years.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Okay, now Jan's not here, right? Somebody's clapping their hands, right? Okay, so it is, okay? Johnny Johnson?
It was interesting.
Gene Curlin, he's not here, okay? John Van Valkenburg?
He's homesick tonight.
He's homesick. This is
So
his
she-
wife, Joy.
I've met her before. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Chuck? I'm saying it, Weezy. His name's Weezy, but I never say it right.
Thank you.
That's it? All right.
Did I leave any veteran out?
I'm at a meeting.
Okay,
David. You did.
okay, thank you.
You did. Chip. Sherman. There you go.
Okay,
Yeah, but that was your dad.
You can stay and eat.
all right, the
Almost
next
maybe all of
thing,
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Got any questions, whatever?
That served.
Ann's gonna come up and help me, and we're gonna, we've got something we wanna give to pass on to our veterans, and that's where the thank you comes in here. Now, we're gonna give each of our veterans a bag, and in the bag, there's a free meal and free ice cream from Burger King, okay? And the Burger King is the one their address is on our agenda thing here. Applebee's gave you 2 cards for $5 each to put onto your meal, to take off on your meal, okay? And ASE Credit Union, they gave pens and stuff like that. We got a lot of stuff from AARP. We got a lot of stuff from them, and then some of us added some stuff to it, okay? So I'm gonna call your name and you come up and we'll give you this, and I got these things to give to you.